James 2:19, the November 25th thought paper, Oneness of God. Thou believest that there is one God. Thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. Is James articulating the Godhead sufficiently, or is it a warning marker for discernment? You will discover it's the latter. This discussion holds no encouragement for the Trinitarian doctrine. This type of scenario of recommendation from James, as it is recorded in James 2:19, sets the stage for 7 Noahide laws. Since the orders given to the Gentile converts by way of the Jerusalem Council were the following. Please see this link. The most that can be stated about the Noahide code as presented by the party of James in Acts 15 are simply injunctions in relation to the book of the law. Yet the rabbinic mindset, this sets the stage for another law that comes out from Jerusalem, Isaiah 2, which is for the Gentiles. And this is specifically what the injunctions of James are advocating when used and applied incorrectly. When understood in light of injunctions for sanitary living, there is no need to take the injunctions to the extreme in order to fabricate another counterfeit law, 7 Noahide laws. Since the Bible clearly dictates that the same law, or 10 Commandments, being the moral law, is both for the native and the stranger that resides within thy gates. The matter of the one God, as recorded in James 2:19, further illustrates the fact that the concepts, as given by Paul by way of revelation, superseded entirely the understanding of the party of James, especially with statements such as 2 Timothy 1:9, which presents the bottom line of who, in reality, was and is eternally righteous. The disciples, especially those of the party of James, were still susceptible as well as subservient to the wine of the scribes and Pharisees, of which Jesus warned his disciples about in Matthew 23. There is one God? A satisfactory answer to James 2:19 resides in Mark 12:28-37, which presents the dichotomy of the one God issue, which is in contrast to John 1:1, which, ironically speaking, Jesus brings up after his brief conversation with the scribe who was an advocate of the one God. Jesus told him he came close to the kingdom, but never did he say that he arrived at the kingdom. Then Jesus goes on to reveal the core issue, which was in contrast to the statement of the scribe, since Psalms 110, 1-4, does present the concept of the two powers. Please see this link. Just as John chapter 1 presents two sections, the first being John 1:1, which equals eternal divinity of both Elohim, and the second being John 1:14, incarnation of the monogenes theos, uniquely begotten God. It is important to notice Psalms 110, 1-4 also presents the pre-existent phase of the Logos of John 1, as well as the order of Melchizedek phase in Psalms 110, 1-2. There is the sitting phase which is synonymous with John 1:1, which reveals a pre-existent conversation between both Lords. And then there is the sent phase of Psalms 110, verses 2 and 3. And verse 3 reveals the dew of thy youth, which presents the equivalent verse to John 1:14, latter part, which is the only begotten from the Father. That equals sonship, which is synonymous to dew of thy youth. The statement with regard to putting the enemies under his feet presents two phases. One, the pre-existent phase, which Revelation 22:13-16 defines as Alpha, and then the sitting down on the throne of David presents the Omega phase of sonship, as seen in Romans 1:3 and Revelation 22:1-2. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, glory as of the only begotten of the Father. Whereas in Psalms 110, sending the rod of thy strength is clearly in line with the messianic prophecy of Micah, where the Messiah proceeds from days of old, from eternity. Micah 5:2. Many will misconstrue this issue and say that he proceeds from the Father as an emanation. Yet this is not what we see in Zechariah 3:8-9. Context: the angel of the Lord speaking. And the angel of Yahweh protested unto Joshua, saying, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, if thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge, then thou also shalt judge my house, and shalt also keep my courts. And I will give thee a place of access among these that stand by. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men that are a sign. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. The context of this matter resides in the fact that the angel of the Lord is the speaker and is clearly stating that he is sending forth the branch, Messiah, which would have to be himself in human form. The same thing is seen in Malachi. Behold, I send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant, whom ye desire, behold, he cometh, saith Yahweh of hosts. In this first scenario, the messenger is John the Baptist, and the Lord that they are seeking is the messenger of the covenant, or the Messiah, which proceeds from days of old, as stated by Micah. It's the same individual, which ushers in everlasting righteousness, as stated in Daniel 9's 70-week prophecy. Jesus' use of Psalms 110. The issue of Psalms 110, 1-4 presents the two in opposition to the so-called oneness of Yaqid as depicted by the scribe. Same issue was brought up by Stephen and his vision of Jesus at the right side of the Father. And again, the issue was brought up when Jesus was on trial and quoted Daniel 7:13. And then the high priest tore his robes and stated the following: we have heard the blasphemy. Paul and the eternity of Melchizedek. Now, a detail to never be overlooked was how Paul defined Melchizedek in Hebrews 7:1-3, that he had no father, nor mother, nor beginning of days, nor end of life. This Bible fact repudiates the pathetic error of emanationism and confirms the eternal identity of he who made, who was Logos, into line John 1:1, and also in reference to Psalms 110, 1-4, which is in relation to Melchizedek and the order of Melchizedek, and how this relates to the unique difference between John 1:1 and John 1:14 and 18. The whole matter resides in the fact that Melchizedek had no father, nor mother, nor beginning of days, nor end of life, being made like unto the Son of God. Hebrews 7:13. The Pauline concept totally refutes a literal, numerical concept of one singular being, and reveals that there are two individual singular beings that are present in Genesis 1:26 and are one, echad, oneness and duality, Elohim, gods. Conclusion: the party of James from Acts 15 resurfaces all the time. Be it known, James never held any light on the matter of the Godhead. In fact, the dissension with Paul was sharp. See Acts 15:2. This type scenario from James 2:19, the advocacy of one God, you doest well, sets the stage for 7 Noahide laws, since the orders given to the Gentile converts by way of the Jerusalem Council are summarized here. Please see this link. The most that can be stated about the Noahide Code and its influence on the Godhead is that the one God of James 2:19 is the same conclusion as presented by the party of James in Acts 15, are simply injunctions in relation to the book of the law, sanitary living in relation to sacrifices. Yet to the rabbinic mindset, James 2:19 is biblical and sets the stage for another law that comes out from Jerusalem, Isaiah 2, which is for the Gentiles, and this is specifically what the injunctions of James are advocating when used incorrectly, yet will be believed as the moral law. But the fact is the 10 Commandments never change, and the moral law is both for the native and the stranger that resides within thy gates. They claim the 7 Noahide laws. It's from Genesis. That the book of the law are the rules and regulations given to Adam and Noah, and later Moses, which later was given at Sinai, along with the 10 Commandments. Fact is that Adam and Eve and Noah were not Gentiles in the way that the word is used today. Case in point, with Seth, and later men began calling on the name of God. The lines were clearly distinct: the sons of God and the line of Cain. The Messianic line was through them reaching down to Christ. So why were there 7 laws for the Gentiles? And he who made wasn't even dealing with them, but establishing his holy nation. I'll read that question again. So why were the 7 laws for the Gentiles when he who made wasn't even dealing with them, but establishing his holy nation? Conclusion: it's very clear they weren't Gentiles, and after the fall of Adam, he who made was dealing with his people and not the Gentiles. Stephen experienced the wrath of the rabbinic in Acts 7. His testimony of he who made confirms the truth of John 1 and Genesis 1:26. 2 divines, anarche, in beginning. Extraordinarily, Saul consented to Stephen's demise and stoning. It's ironic that it took the Damascus Road experience to remove the scales from Paul's eyes. Stephen, and later, Paul gave no witness or credence of the law of Noah. Stephen's testimony gave absolutely no advocacy of James 2:19 equals one God that thou doest well. Nor did Paul, nor did John, nor Isaiah, nor Moses. Paul, John, Isaiah, Moses would rephrase James 2:19 to read, thou believest that there were two divines, anarche, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble, to never be forgotten.